Hi, and welcome to join us on this discussion on creativity in a shifting landscape, how to keep innovation flowing in home offices, which is not that easy, as we all know by now. So this event is brought to you by Lund University School of Economics and Management, who conduct research and education in close collaboration with the business community. And we are live here from Malmö in Sweden today, but we have an international audience, which is fantastic. We know that people are tuning in to listen from India, Germany, Switzerland, Slovenia, and many more places. So a really warm welcome to you as well. I'm Kristin Heinonen. I will host this talk, and we have three fantastic guests with us today in this panel. First, we have Ebba Ljungerud, CEO of gaming studio at Paradox Interactive, and also an alumna of Lund University School of Economics and Management. Hi, Ebba.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? And then we also have Magnus Thure Nilsson, CEO of Media Evolution City and the Conference. Hello, Magnus Thure.
Hello.
Hello, and last but not least, Calle Rosengren, Associate Professor in Work Environment Technology at the Faculty of Engineering at Lund University. Hello, Calle.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello in Swedish. So, we have some practical information before we get started to the audience. We want to hear from you. So, there are two ways to interact with us today. You can go to menti.com and you enter the code 5538534. 5538534. And you can join a little quiz. We will have a few questions along the way that you can tune in with us and let us know how you are doing in this situation working from home. You can also write questions to the speakers, and then you write them in the chat, in the live chat at YouTube Live underneath the screen. You need to have a Google account to do that, though, but you can write questions and we'll try to pick them up along the way as well. So, but I want to start this discussion by going back in time a bit and revisit a little bit what it was like when all this started. Ebba, at Paradox Interactive, you're a global company. You have 500 employees in 9 studios across the world, and this gave you kind of a bird's eye view of how the pandemic started to roll out in different countries. So if you please take us back at the beginning of the year, what was it like and what were you thinking at the time?
So we're actually 600 employees, I should say.
Stand corrected.
So we have also, apart from our own 9 studios, we also work with many other studios because we do both build our own games and we also publish games from others. So we already at the beginning of the year had some of our partners in China who had to close down, or not close down really, but they have to move to work from home, which gave us a little, I would say, we got a little bit of a sense of what the problems were quite early, especially in terms of how do you just get equipment home to people's houses fast, etc. But at that point, we weren't really considering that it would reach Europe at all. I think some of my colleagues were maybe more ahead in the thinking than I was personally, but that was the case. And then US, we have our studios in the US on the West Coast, and especially Seattle, we're quite early in having a lot of cases. So eventually more and more of our studios needed to move from home. But I think what happened in all of the cases was that the decision to move was very fast. So we started to mentally prepare 1 week, and then 5 days later we had moved everyone home. So it was a very very fast transition period, which of course meant that we created some issues with that, especially around how to move things home, how to move people home, etc. And in our industry, where a lot of my colleagues have quite heavy equipment, especially if you work with art or programming that takes very powerful computers, it's always been the case that you think that it's not possible and it's going to be too much issues. So it's quite an interesting shift there,
Mm.
which I have to say went extremely well, all things considered, but still. And
But
a lot of people were scared as well at this
yeah,
point. So that also affected.
and as you said, it happened fast, even though you did kind of get a little bit of heads up since you had collaborations with China. And I don't think that you were alone in thinking that it probably wouldn't spread that much or that fast. If I can turn over to you, Magnus Thure, just to explain a little bit about your business. You have basically, it's like 3 organizations that are organizing around 400 member companies in the south of Sweden around technology and creativity, and you have a huge house which we're sitting in at the moment, by the way, which hosts offices and co-working spaces. And when the pandemic started hitting Sweden in early spring, describe a little bit what happened to your companies and your organizations.
Well, it happened super fast and we were not prepared at all. I remember we had a board meeting on a Wednesday or a Thursday maybe, and everything was going super well. Monday after, everything closed down. So a lot of our businesses, or the main idea of our business, is to get people to meet more in person and more often. And I mean, it's the worst business idea ever right now. So we actually had a big problem and big shift and big depression, and we had to turn it around. And now we're there again with the second wave of this pandemic thing. So right now I'm doing the last pieces of the budget for next year, and it doesn't look that good, to be honest. But we will manage, and we will get it all right. But I mean, it's a long way until we reach something that looks like it did before, if ever. So it's a deep shift, and maybe a good one also in some ways.
Yeah.
But yes.
And a fast shift there as well. I think what all of a sudden what every organization had in common all over the world was that from one week to the other we were all sitting at home, working from home and trying to make that manageable. Well, lucky as we have an expert on the working from home subject with us as well, Calle Rosengren. Your research is based on how digitalization affects work environment and working conditions. And give us a little bit of perspective, because many people were working remotely even before the pandemic. But so what do we know of how people usually work remotely, and what was kind of the big difference with when the pandemic started hitting us?
Yes, you mentioned that telework or working remotely from home is by no means a novel phenomenon. It has been around for over a decade. So, but what is new now with the situation with COVID-19 is that this phenomenon encompasses a larger part of the workforce. That is people and organizations that have no prior experience at all of remote working now do it for the first time. And also that people who used to telework before now do it to a larger extent. Perhaps you work from home 1 or 2 days a week and now you do it full time. So, and the full consequences is yet to be known. I mean, in relation to work environment, productivity and creativity.
And
so
you're
I
doing
cannot say anything certain about that right now. But a general reflection is that I've been around and studying this for over a decade now. When it first emerged, telework, it was seen as something pretty prestigious. It was linked with freedom and autonomy, that you could be able to work remotely from your own home and decide when and where to work. It was seen as a positive thing. And now I think as we work more style of fashion and we have more research, we can also see that there are some pitfalls. Most commonly known perhaps is the boundaryless aspect of work, that we have in trouble to detach mentally from work, and that could affect how we unwind, and also our sleeping habits. So it can be hard to let go of thoughts from work, especially for some who have their office perhaps in their close to their bed or in the kitchen table or such. So it's easy to kind of get to think about work even if you're not working. So, and also what we see is that it affects the social interaction at the work. So the risk of social isolation is pretty big, and specifically among those who are new at their work, who has yet to get into the social context, and also new groups who haven't worked together before. So
yeah, and I think that what you're saying there, many can relate to that. It's different now, because before the pandemic, it was optional to work from home. Now everybody has to do it, and you could opt in to go to work if you need to get a certain task done. Usually something involving creativity, right? Meeting a lot of people, interacting. Now that's just not possible anymore. And we want to go into this with creativity for a little bit now. And here we would love to hear from everyone who's in the audience. If you go to menti.com again, here's our first question to you. And the question is, how has creative work been affected at your workplace during the pandemic? Is it not at all? Creativity levels are a little bit lower. Creativity has suffered greatly, or perhaps it has even spurred creativity in some cases. We have already answers ticking in, and we will check in a little bit later to see what the results are looking at like. But Ebba, we had a chat before this, and you told me that, I mean, it's a very creative process to do games, right? It's like creativity is like the core. You have to create these magic worlds. And you said that how it impacted creativity at your company, at Paradox, it depended a little bit on where in the process you were with a project. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so developing a game is a very, very long process, first of all. It can be anywhere from 2, if you're fast, to 5 years, even longer. So, of course, there are many different phases in this. And what we noticed quite early on is that the projects that were late, that had come very far. So we released the game in September, for instance. That game, they were sort of in the end process, and a lot of the coming up with the cool ideas had already been done. So it's a lot about bug fixing, making sure the game works for release, and all of those things. So that process worked really well from home. And that's been true for many of the projects, that you can be quite focused. I think almost going back to what Calle said before, it was almost the opposite problem, that you're so close, you have the space between your bed and your workplace is very, very near, so it's almost like you work too much, and it's hard to put boundaries on when it's free time and work. So that was something that we had to manage from that perspective. But then also what we noticed, and that's maybe something that's been more evident the longer this has gone on, is that the projects that are early on, they do have quite a bit of things depending on just meeting in person. It's easier to be, if I just generalize, it's easier to be creative in a big group. This is not true for everyone, of course, but there are many elements of that. And one thing that we believe, and I believe, really spurs creativity is meeting with people who aren't maybe the ones you work closest to every single day. Because on that level, it's easy is maybe a strong word, but it's fairly easy to set up a structure around daily stand-ups or meetings or writing studios, etc. But it's all the other inspiration you have from just being out and about, but also meeting with people who work with other games perhaps, or have completely different jobs within the company, where we were talking about it before, that people hate it when I come with great ideas on what to include in the games, but those stupid ideas can also spur inspiration and something new, and that's the part we see is suffering here, and we miss it. And then on sort of next to that, it's also, we are in an incredibly lucky situation compared to most in this day and age. Just hearing what Magnus said before, that we are employing people, we're doing very well financially, But having a big influx of new people, who many of them moved from other countries, that is also quite a difficult thing. How do you build company culture when you never meet? And how do you make people feel included and a part of something when it's quite hard to put a face to what that actually is? So many different levels of the challenges. And I think I do think that what we do, there is an element of magic involved. And that's like the secret sauce is the magic. And the magic is harder digitally, basically.
Yeah, lots of spontaneity gets lost when everything
Yeah,
is
exactly.
structured, right? And I know, Calle, I know that you have identified this in or it has been identified in research that social interactions, like spontaneous social interactions, is something that is suffering with remote work, right?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of our communication these days is focused around tasks and solving tasks, and we have specific meetings that have a specific agenda. So what is lost is the communication that we usually have between meetings in the coffee areas, where we talk about other things than work, but we also meet other groups who we are not directly connected to. So those are two important aspects, I think, and we know for a fact that prior research reveals that the non-task related communication is important to build trust within groups. So how do we achieve that, and how can we create interaction and meeting areas that kind of help to further this type of communication?
Magnus, Thure, how has creativity been affected in your organizations and in the type of work you do with your colleagues?
You mean except from very profoundly and everything?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea with our houses is what Calle is talking about, the meeting that you can't, predict. Because we're working, try to figure out what the future looks like, and the only thing that I know about the future is that it's impossible to know anything. And I mean, the innovation or the smart things that I can come up with, or all the other people, it's just as smart as their combinations of heads can be. So I mean, the real smartness and the real innovation is what I think is born within the platform or the situation that you can't predict. So our means of being is trying to make a platform where everything can happen that we couldn't predict. So that's not left. So everything is gone actually in some way. So it's really hard to reinvent this. I mean, it's possible. Of course, it has to be less physical and more digital, whatever this will lead to. So I think this is the answer for the future. Everything will be more digital when it comes to communication between people, and we have to find out ways that really works. And for instance, look at the interface that we're using right now. I mean, it's we will look at this in a couple of years and we will laugh at it because it's pure crap. And that's what things are when they are really newborn. And this is a newborn way of communicating. And there will be, I mean, the UX design of this will be super sharp in a couple of years, but we'll see.
Yeah. Apart from the tools, something that I think I have noticed and many others have noticed during this situation of working from home, that different personalities handle remote work differently. I know you talked about this, Ebba, in your organization. Like, we talked about the extroverts and the introverts. What have you noticed?
Well, I mean, this is of course being at home all the time, and also, and in especially in Sweden, we have a very international workforce. It's less international in the other countries, but the restrictions are also more severe in other countries, so you can compare it, I think. But one thing, if we talk about Sweden specifically, you don't necessarily speak the language. Sweden has had a somewhat different approach to Corona. So, and then you read your own country's news. That has caused a lot of not friction, but a lot of anxiety, really, for a lot of people. So we have many colleagues who don't really go out. And if you're an extrovert, that's a problem because you need the social interaction. But in a sense, I think extrovert people seek interaction more. And when we look at our more introvert members of staff, I think many of them, they don't mind so much the working from home, but a lot of many introvert people also like meeting others, and the effort to do that is just so much higher now than if you just meet and chat for 2 minutes by the coffee machine, and that's maybe enough. But now you don't even have that. So we are actively trying to figure out ways to use the digital tools that are available to help that. And I mean, it certainly helps being in gaming, because we have a lot of tools attached to the gaming world anyway, like Discord and Twitch and other areas. So one thing that we use a lot, apart from the work tools like Slack, etc., but we do use Discord a lot to just have open channels all day long where you can sort of interact on a more spontaneous basis.
Yeah, we'll get back to just in a second just how to boost creativity and what tools we can use. But I want to check in with the results from Menti for a little while. So to see what you have answered. So how has creativity been affected at your workplace? So the majority says that creativity levels are a little lower. There are 10 respondents say that has not been affected at all. 16 respondents have said that creativity has suffered greatly, and actually 36 respondents, so which is like the second most common answer here, is that the pandemic has resulted in new ideas and actually then boosted creativity a little bit. So that's kind of interesting, I think. It has boosted creativity a little bit. So let's get on to the boost creativity part of this discussion, because personally, for me, during the pandemic, first it was a little bit exciting, and you sit from home and you do the video meetings, and then enters Zoom fatigue, because it's a lot of screen time when you work remotely. It gets boring quickly. So how do you keep coworkers engaged when they are stuck in front of their screens? So how have you guys done it in your different organizations? Magnus, Thure, what have you done?
Could I first just comment on what Ebba said, because I think she's onto something that is really important, and I think we tend to look at extroverts as extroverts and introverts as introverts, and that's not the case. They both need to meet people, just they find energy in different ways, and they find, you know, a different way of doing it. So I mean, everyone needs it. So this is a bad situation for everyone. Though it's even worse, I guess, for the extroverts. But anyhow, yes, I think Ebba also, she mentioned some of the tools. I mean, she mentioned Slack and some other stuff, and I think from our point of view, we've been working with this Trello and Slack and so forth for a long time, and we've been better and better on it, but really not that good. But now we've forced ourselves to be very good. That's the best way, isn't it? I mean, constraint is the best way of actually give birth to new stuff. So we've just been forced ourselves to be really good at Slack. So we communicate. That's the difference. Bad thing again that both Ebba and Calle said. Your tools or your desk is too close to your bed, so you tend to Slack all the time, of course. But it really works. Actually, I'm a little bit surprised of how good it works on an emotional level also. So I mean, you feel the warmth, you feel the closeness to your colleagues, and no, it really works. Combine it, for my sake, combine that with telephone calls, and I'm quite home actually.
Ebba, I know you had many different initiatives at Paradox. What have you done to try to boost creativity and the feeling of togetherness?
I think a key component when you're many people is to help your managers help their teams, because it's also a quite tough situation to be a manager in, especially when you maybe see that some of your team members aren't doing that well. How do you deal with that? And first of all, how do you detect it? And second of all, how do you deal with it? So we have tried to really give our managers some tools, but then we've also done one of my colleagues in San Francisco, the first couple of days, she did a really funny and good work from home survival guide that went out to everyone, which was things like, you know, set your work schedule, go out for a walk, or whatever, talk to your cat, you know, whatever the circumstances is where you are at, and don't really be quite strict on not working all the time. And I think also combining a few different, like we have a lot of we used to have a lot of meetings where everyone could ask questions, like bigger meetings, like for the whole company. And now we combine a stream like this stream with, for instance, Slack. So you can ask questions on Slack, because it's a bit more difficult to be interactive like this, which kind of works, and it becomes a little bit interactive anyway. It's not ideal, but it kind of works. And then I think this Discord, having open channels all day long, has also been great for, not for all our teams, but for some teams. So you know, there are many different tools, and I think also, but for me, a key thing, both when it comes to creativity and how you do, is to remember the managers and how hard it is for to be a manager in this situation as well.
Actually, there's a question to you, Ebba, from the audience. Jonas wants to know, do you have any tips? I fully share the experience Ebba has working on current projects. Do you have any tips on how to kickstart new projects and form new teams?
So we have been doing thought leadership within our studio organization. This is our COO who runs the studios. She has put up some different tracks, if you call it that. It can be QA, it can be art, it can be anything. We've also increased our peer review from one project to the next. So we have, every game is run by a creative director, a game director, and they didn't have this before, but they now have bi-weekly meetings when they share experiences and share tips and tricks. So it's really very much about trying, and I mean, it's very hard to force this, I would say. It's more to enable sharing experiences, and also, and you know, play each other's games, come up with ideas. Even on a very early stage, when you do prototyping, you can, it can be scary to show your prototyping, but actually it can also help quite a lot. So in some way, you said before that some has sparred more creativity. I do think that the cooperation between our studios has increased during these months, which is great.
Yeah, I know, Calle, you when I talked to you before, you mentioned that there like you can kind of divide how people structure their remote from home workday in different ways, which I thought was really interesting. Could you tell us a little about like the different types?
Yeah, so this is a time diary study we conducted before the COVID situation, just to mention that. But we saw very clear pattern that we could divide. It's the same way we could divide the workforce into introvert and extroverts. We also have the integrators who like to blend and mix work-related activities and private-related activities during a workday. So you can do private activities while at work. You can book a trip or be in contact with your kids, for example. And also you can bring work home and work in the evenings and in the weekends. So, and then on the opposite side of this, we have the separators who absolutely don't like to blend and mix work and private, the work in the private sphere. So, and they do anything to keep those apart. And interesting thing we saw in relation to this field is called boundary theory, and prior studies, we also saw aspects of these separators. We saw those who perceived the place, the workplace, as an important marker for this is where work is conducted. So, and they could work long hours, so time wasn't so important. So I could work in evenings or weekends, but work was conducted at the office. And then we have the time separators who perceive time as an important marker between work and the rest of the life. So they could work from home, they could work at the cinema, the bus, the cafe, anywhere, but never after a specific time. So that was pretty interesting to see. And especially among these different groups, I think the place separators is perhaps a group that is in trouble. I mean, if you really think it's important to leave your work at the workplace, how do they feel about the situation right now? And how do you create a boundary between work and the rest of life when it's integrated into the private sphere? And also, how do you integrate it in your home in relation to, I mean, the family situation? If you have a partner sitting at the opposite end of the kitchen table and you have kids, gymnasium in Sweden. I mean, it was closed during the spring. You have teenagers running around the home. And how do you manage to get that into a working day? So, yeah, I think it affects people in quite a different way depending on how you want to integrate or separate work from the rest of your life. So.
Yeah, and based on those observations, you could kind of, as you said, guess that if you don't mind mixing work and private life before, it's more easier to dive into this kind of work mode that we have now. If you are very much into like the offices where I work, it's probably more of a strain handling it. But I think we have all been under the strain right now working from our kitchen tables. And I saw it was a tweet from some of the like big shot corporate guys in the US said that one of his kids walked into his board meeting in a penguin suit. So we have all been there, like trying to balance where everyone is working from home, perhaps not just one member of the family, but everyone, which makes it a bit more of a challenge, right? That leads us very comfortably onto the subject of productivity, right? I must confess that at some point things have just been so overwhelming that I just logged out and I watched Netflix in the middle of the day for 2 hours because I just couldn't get into a productive mode just staying at home. I'm probably one of these guys who likes to have a workplace to go to. I want to go to Menti again and check in with our audience and ask you, how has your productivity been affected by working from home? And we already have a few answers there. Please log on and get some more answers on there if you can. If it has not been affected at all, you're a working machine, you can just go through this. Or if it has perhaps even boosted your creativity, or if it's way down. We'll see how your answers are forming in just a little while. When we are working from home, there are certain things that suddenly disappear. Like the 10-minute chat at the coffee machine with a colleague that you weren't supposed to be meeting with, but you had a nice meeting with. Or commuting, which in some big city areas in Europe around the world means hours of your day, right? So now to the million-dollar question, and I'm not sure who to put this question to, but is 8 hours of work in the office the same as 8 hours of work at your kitchen table? Anyone who goes first?
Okay, I'll jump right in. I don't think so. I think 8 hours in the office is less than 8 hours in at home at the kitchen table, but with some very big caveats here. The first one is that I think some of the less work related out of the 8 hours in the office is actually what triggers a lot of ideas, like the ping pong game or the coffee or whatever that is. And I also think that having a lot of international parts in my company, you can't underestimate how incredibly tough it is to homeschool a 10-year-old while you're trying to actually do something as well. So I think in that sense, yes, it's been tough in Sweden with the high school kids, but it's a completely different situation in most countries where the schools have not been open, especially during the spring. So there we have really tried to be very open to shall we say, productivity adaptations. All in all, we haven't really, I wouldn't say we've seen productivity go down overall. I think that we have seen it change, and it goes in different waves. But in the beginning, I have to say, I was more worried about people never leaving their computer than, yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
What about you and your colleagues, Magnus, Thure? How has it been with the productivity levels?
I guess it's been good, but it's interesting with this 8 hours because I think it puts on something that I think could potentially be the good outcome of this. That we really try to look upon these 8 hours and see, is it really relevant? 8 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, is it really relevant, or is it actually what comes out of this 8 hours that is really good? And that's one of the things. The other thing, because I think Ebba is totally right on this one, is okay, what about all that time that isn't very productive, but it's something that it's productive in long term, or even contemplating, or whatever it is. I mean, you're doing something during these 8 hours, and you're doing something else during 8 hours at home. That's for sure. But if it's good or bad, or what way it will bring us, we don't know. But I just hope that we will take and grasp some of the things that we actually learned during this last 12 months or 10 months maybe, and try to keep the good things, and really think I mean, in our place, when people get kids, the small kids, and have to go to daycare quite often to get them, we don't count any hours. I mean, go when you have to, work ready when you want to. It's a matter of trust, I think. We are a small company. It's something completely else for Ebba, of course, but I think that is something we have to break it down to: trust between people, and look upon the productivity and what you really want to do, short and long term, not the hours.
Let's have a look at the results from Menti and see what our viewers are saying. How has productivity been affected by working from home? So actually, most answers, the most people respond that it has been affected a little bit, but not so much it's an issue. About 28 people say that. 19 of you say that productivity is way down. Interestingly enough, just as many respond that working from home has boosted my productivity. So it's really all over the scale there. I guess it depends a lot of also what type of work you do. But Calle, I think that looking at productivity, this 8-hour workday feels a bit of something that would be challenged after hopefully sometime in the future when all this is over. How we look at productivity and being in an office. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it poses the questions: what is work actually? So, and how do we perceive what work actually is? And the easy way to kind of like construct what work is that it's something that's done in specific areas, offices, during specific times. So that's one easy way to frame what work is. So being at the office during 9 to 5, that is work. And that's perhaps an image that has lived on from industrial society, when work was very confined to times and areas. So, but today work is something else, and it's not so easy to really measure what am I doing during a working day. And that's a problem, I think, because we don't always have something to show at the end of the day that can illustrate that we have been productive. And so in a sense, this 9 to 5 at the office is a good way to kind of like showing that I've actually been working. And now that I work at home, and I don't have anything specific to show at the end of the day, who knows that I even have been working. So except for sending a lot of emails, perhaps, to symbolize to them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's the best test of productivity, but we have a question from.
I don't think it is, but I mean it. Yeah, so we need to kind of like discuss productivity and also what work actually is, and we also need to have closer discussions between managers and co-workers about expectations of their deliverance. So, and I think, I'm not sure how it is at your place, Ebba, and also to you, Magnus. Do managers really know specifically what their employees are doing, and how do you follow up on productivity
We do.
measures?
Almost all of our teams do daily check-ins, and some also do daily check-outs. So that becomes like first of all, it becomes like a framework for the day. You start with a check-in, you end with a check-out, which I think is quite good. But it also makes it quite tangible, like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. Yeah. And it also, because I agree with you, it's like that is certainly an advantage of going to the office. It's like, now I'm working, now I'm not working. So it's a very good point.
We have a question here that I want to bring up. From one of the listeners, one of our viewers. It says, as leaders, do you put more focus on mental health now? Do you have some particular initiatives on informing your employees and offer mental health support to keep the spirits up?
Can I rephrase the question?
Sure.
Thanks. Since we don't have that kind of leadership, I don't put much more effort in it, but we do at the office. We talk a lot about it because people are quite open about it, because they have to be, because they have to let go of some steam now and then. And I think if this situation would go on like this for a couple of years, we have to really think through it really deeply and make some real severe changes. Because I mean, for instance, I mean the ratio of divorces just went up the roof in Sweden after summer, and the first thing that you think, oh, this is because people had to be home and see each other too much and too often. That's not the case, of course. The case is everything is changing so fast. So of course, the thing with your emotional relationships change also, and that takes a turn of everything. So I mean, we have to look at that at a much broader and deeper level. What health is, what is health connection to work, what is colleagues, how do we build, like what you're talking about here before, I mean, between colleagues, how we are different, how can we support each other to do the best work we can and produce the best things that we really can, long term, not short term. So I mean, it raises a lot of questions, and we've been talking a lot about it, and it will change the way we think about mental health in any way. So yes and no is the answer.
There's actually another question which relates a little bit to this from Sihan. I hope I got that right. The majority expects a UX boost of digital tools, but what about connecting digital in a comfortable way? And by that, I suspect it means like really connecting on an emotional level while using digital tools. Like when you say let out some steam and have an honest conversation about how everyone is feeling, Magnus, Thure, does that happen on Slack, or how does that happen? Does it feel okay for your coworkers to be more engaged digitally, or do you feel that people are more constrained?
Yeah, again, I don't want to rephrase it when I want to put the question to the other ones, because I mean, of course that is the case, and of course, I mean, expressing your deepest thoughts and how you are and how you feel and have that trust, that is something you have to train. Of course, and that is something that you build with the colleagues you got. So I guess the digital tools or the real life tools, whatever you use, I mean, it is something that you build a culture around. And of course, this is the first time we do it like this, so it is developing. If it's good or not, if it was better before, I don't know. I mean, it is developing. I mean, Ebba, you've been working remote for years, and that's your, I mean, way of being. Are people being very emotional in the digital tools, or?
No, but I think I think Slack is a terrible tool for an argument. So that's something that. But back to the first question is we talk more about mental health now, but we also talk about it connected to physical health. So we have a lot of exercise initiatives, and that sounds very. A bit more than it is. I mean, there is like proper exercise, but we also have a weekly meditation session. We have also training sessions, but we also have step competitions. Go for a walk with your colleague digitally. You know, many companies do this, but we try to do it quite structured and have it every week, etc. So it's easy for people to just jump in. We also do a lot of lunch and learns, which we've always done, but now it's digital and anyone can join. And it's not just about making games, it can be about anything. So those have been very popular, just to try to connect a little bit. And then to the next question, how do you show? We as a company have been pretty clear on that. When you have an argument, you either you leave Slack first of all, and then you go to either phone, and ideally you go to a video conference where you see each other. Or it doesn't need to be an argument, but when you need to discuss something that you don't necessarily agree about. That's something that I would really emphasize, that Slack is terrible for trying to get over when you don't agree on something.
So
and the more you see each other, the better, basically.
So is that the thing? Text is not enough when you have to argue about something.
I think we see it time and time again, that things aren't solved, then they just escalate. So the way to solve is to actually see each other. And we don't enforce. I know many companies and teams enforce webcams. We don't do that, but it would be definitely an advice that the less you agree, the more you need to see each other, so to speak.
We
Sounds like you're doing a lot of good work at your company, Ebba, with the
Yeah, we try.
daily check-ins, and also you have social activity, even if it's directed to mental health, the way you connect with the others. Have
We
you
also
seen
have
any?
we have after work every week as well on Discord for the whole company, where we watch movies together and play games and stuff. So
have you seen any effects on sick leave or and such?
no, but I don't know is the correct answer. I don't know. But we are looking at tools, because I'm back to this, that it's when you have a slightly larger organization, it's of course a lot of this is put on the manager's responsibility. So we are also looking at tools to make it a little bit easier to follow up for managers, but we don't have them yet. I do think it's definitely a good idea to have it though.
we just simply will have to see. I like it, Calle. You're going into research questions already with the panelists. We're going to spend the last 10-15 minutes of this discussion looking a bit ahead. We also have the last question for our audience on Menti, which is this. What do you miss most from your office? And we already have quite a few people building up in the word cloud there, but we're going to get back to that in just a little moment, because I think this is something that is going to change a lot after the pandemic. How we see the office, what is actually the point of it. A fun thing that you can check out if you want to is you can go to a website called imisstheoffice.eu, which is a creative agency in Berlin who made an office noise generator. So you can add, if you want to have the sound of 8 co-workers or 10 co-workers, you hear the sound of a printer and someone cursing at it, and even like the occasional ping pong game. So you can it's a great idea. So you can have a kind of like a soundscape if you're sitting working from home, which sounds like the office. But going to that, like, how has the office changed? Like, Calle, you do a lot of thinking on this. How has the office changed, like now before the pandemic, as we know, with remote work, and if you want to speculate a little bit on what's ahead?
So even before the pandemic, during the last over the last couple of years, we've seen pretty dramatic changes in how office is designed and the layout of office, and most commonly known as the activity-based working place, where you don't have a designated seating, but rather you have different areas designed for different tasks. So you have collaborative areas and you have more focused areas. So that changed even before, and I think it will continue in that area. And I think one lesson learned from this is that some of the activity, the tasks we're involved in our work are pretty well suited to be done from home. So the focused work, we can be more effective. But we also need this interaction with colleagues, and perhaps we will see in the future that the office is more focused on collaboration and social activities, perhaps. So
you stay at home for concentrating and doing your in-depth work, and then you connect with the colleagues in the office for the more outgoing creative parts,
perhaps,
so to say. Yeah,
perhaps.
This actually sounds a lot like the kind of offices you're providing, Magnus Thure. What you are very close to what discussed right now, since you provide office space as a part of your business idea. So how are companies now changing their thinking around office spaces?
Well, first of all, just a comment on Calle. That's, I think, is totally right, and I think this has been going on for many years. And as you say, also, Kristin, we're doing this since many years. But since the last months, since spring, it's been emerging in a way we couldn't predict. I mean, everyone is looking for a new kind of office. Everyone thinks that it will change in some way. I mean, we work quite close to real estate owners and developers, and they are super afraid, and everyone is doing good stuff and really bad stuff just to find out a way that how will it work later on? Will the cities change overall? Will the urbanization change now? And Calle is talking about his before here. He's working from now and then from his summer house and so forth. The thing that happened here during this spring was all of a sudden, during a week actually, a lot of companies handful of companies called me up and said, could you please start a small place? I mean, you're talking about this before. Yes, when we started in 2012, we were thinking about, we got 2 houses now. We were discussing, could this be the mothership, and could we make some small things around, because people want other stuff and they want it closer. And
like
now,
satellite offices, just to understand what.
Sorry?
Like satellite offices or
satellite offices.
Okay,
sorry,
yes.
satellite offices, smaller ones. And what happens now is that people tend not to want to communicate anymore, or commute, that is. So all of a sudden, small cities call us up. Could you start an office here? Because we've got a lot of people traveling into Malmö, Helsingborg, whatever it is, and they don't want to do that. And we want to keep them. We want to provide something that is really good, something that actually make people want to move to a little small city. Maybe there is a good co-working space filled with something good. Maybe this also raises the level of pricing and whatever you want to do in that city. Combined with that, there are shops closing everywhere. Since everyone is actually shopping online, there are housing, they're empty, and that will happen, of course. So this is the 2 things. The third more interesting thing was the biggest companies, they were coming, maybe a big and small in some scale, 100, 150 persons, said that maybe we shouldn't have 1 office, maybe we should have 5 of them, to be closer to our customers, to be closer where people live, of course, so they don't have to commute, and to actually get more impact from other people, from more spaces in different places. And the last one that I couldn't see happening before, if there is a pandemic coming, maybe there is just 1 of the cells actually getting sick, the other 4 are actually well. So I mean, there are many ways of why this will emerge, and the question is just how. And there are a lot of companies popping up right now that are doing this, but most of them are just building, office spaces like a desk. And I don't think that will be enough. You have to fill it with creativity, or the thing that will make it easy for you to meet other people or actually find new creativity. So yes, there will be another day for tomorrow when it comes to our business also. And I think you will work in different places, and the office as we know it, old times, it will not work anymore.
Yeah, but that's interesting that it could, you mean that there could be a fear for that a pandemic could happen again. So it would be a security measure for like a large company with, say, like 500 employees to divide it up in different, like smaller offices, right?
Yeah, and it don't have to be a pandemic. I mean, come on, we know in February everyone turned really sick in Sweden and they stay home for a week or 2 because their kids are, or they are themselves. If you just can like lower that figure, then it's good enough. I mean, and that happens all over the year also.
Yeah. Very true. So let's have a look at the responses at the last question at Menti. What do you miss most from your office? And this is a word cloud. I have to describe this to our panelists because they don't see this word cloud. And the biggest word in this word cloud is colleagues. Colleagues in big blue letters. And after that, I would say coffee breaks. So colleagues, coffee breaks, and hugs. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So thank you for filling that out. I think a lot of us can relate to that. The thing with sitting at home working is that we do miss the interaction of and meeting with and hugging and having coffee with our colleagues. What about the office space that you have, Ebba? I know it was nominated for like the most gorgeous office in Sweden, which must feel a bit ironic by now. Do you miss the office?
Very nice. No, I don't think that we are looking. I mean, and when I say we, I mean my company. But I also think I don't foresee that we won't be going to the office at all in the future. But I think both Calle and Magnus mentioned it. What do you do where, and how do we enable? Because that, and now I almost feel a bit embarrassed that we haven't thought about this years ago. But sometimes you need a pandemic to change how you think, apparently. But if you need to focus, no matter, and especially a lot of our guys and girls are programmers, and they really need to focus to be able to write code for games. And then maybe it's not the best to sit in the office. Maybe it's better to sit at home and spend the days when you have meetings and you discuss how to solve problems together. Those days you spend in the office. So it's more about how do we solve that. And there are lots of aspects to this. In Sweden specifically, well, it's probably true for most countries really, but all legislation is based on an office or a factory. Really, it's not even based on it's very old, the legislation around health, environment, all of those things. So I think there's also when the politicians ask what do we want, that's one of the things we push the most. That for this to work longer term, there also needs to be a review of the legal constraints, and also where does the responsibility end and begin from an employer point of view. And also, I mean, a lot of people they don't have the space to have an extra desk where you can stand up and all the screens you need, etc., etc. So there are, of course, limitations, but how can we work around that, and how can we build that better for the future? We've been very clear that Paradox as a company we're not going to be one of those companies who say that we're going to be working from home until the end of time. But we have also said that we will definitely have a more flexible situation for everyone. I mean, I've always been able to work from wherever. Normally I travel so much, I don't travel at all at the moment. And many others of my colleagues as well. But then there's like a whole other part that have not been able to do that. So how can we balance that a bit better for the future? But I still think that we will get a lot of usage of our beautiful office.
Speaking of the future, I want to spend the last 5 minutes or so talking about just that. So let's speculate a little bit. What habits do you think that you will have kept that are born out of this pandemic?
Okay, I'll repeat what I just said. This thing that people who work with things that historically, if I put it that way, have been like, you have to go to the office, that there's a much better solution for them to also work from home when that's needed and when you want to maybe focus in a different way, etc. That I really think we will keep.
What about you, Magnus, Thure? What will you
There are so
keep?
many things. I would say one thing overall is that we will look on the office and our work with new eyes, I think. And I think what Ebba said, I think that is one of the most profound and biggest changes, I think. I mean, everything that we did is out of industrial way of seeing things. It's actually 100 years old, 150, the way we look at why we go to the office, when we go, and when we go home, and vacation and so forth. That will change. In what way, I don't know, but I think maybe it's not the 5-day week anymore. Maybe it's not the 8 hours anymore. Maybe it's something else. And I think that we already went that path many years ago, but and now it will change even more for more people, I think. So in that way, a lot of and I think the result of that will be better mental health connected to your work.
Calle, what do you say?
Yeah, I think like the other panelists are saying, that the image of work will perhaps change forever, from an industrial view of work to a more looking at work as perhaps pre-industrial, like it was in the agrarian society, where work is defined by the task, the chores at hand. If you need to harvest, you did that, and you did that perhaps for 12 hours during a shorter period, and then you had periods where you did nothing, so I think perhaps we will go back in history. That is.
I love that mental image of you harvest. Your work is like a harvest, and when it's done, it's done, and you can rest. We have
the problem just one is when you have both of them. So you need to be both harvesting, and you also need to be an industrial worker working 9 to 5. So you need to either decide what is work and how do we define it, and how do we kind of like follow up on it from a managerial point of view.
We have a couple of more questions from the audience that I want to squeeze in here. The question is, do you think physical meetings will be more or less practiced post-pandemic? Anyone who has to say can just go.
I think less, but I don't think they will go away.
Less meetings. Perhaps less traveling too.
No, not less, not necessarily less meetings, unfortunately, maybe, but less physical meetings, but not, I don't think physical meetings will go away. And the same goes for traveling. Slightly less traveling, but it's not going to go away.
If I could fill in something, I think totally agree with Ebba, but maybe not less, but different. The way we will meet will be in a different way. Maybe we will not meet like, 50 persons if we don't have to. Maybe that will be less, and in another way. That will stay.
And there's also a great question, which I think will be our last question for today. And this is for Magnus and Ebba. If there's one thing that you're very proud of that your organization has done during the pandemic, what is it? Perhaps like a creative moment or new ways of doing things.
I'm very proud of that we, from day one, focused on taking care of our staff, with building a lot of communication and a lot of extra activities and all of the things around. And we have a team of extremely dedicated and great people who spend a lot of time on that. I'm very proud of that.
Magnus, Thure, what is your proudest moment out of this?
It's not a proud moment, it's a proud way of thinking, I guess. As I said before, when I started, we had some hard times when this really was a tough thing for us. I'm proud of my organization because they totally turned around and doing something completely else now than we did before. We're just nothing. They just did it. It's fantastic, and I know it's been super hard for some of them and for all, and they really made it, and it's fantastic. If they weren't that flexible and that filled of energy and the lust of actually doing good, then we would have been out of business months ago. So I'm really proud of that kind of strength. I think they're fantastic.
Calle, you are currently researching the whole situation. When will we know more of that research and what has come out of it?
Hopefully we will have some data by next year. Currently we're using a method called photo elicitation, which is pretty interesting. People are actually photographing their home work environment, and then based on those interviews we will interview them. So we are looking forward to see a lot of pictures from people's working at home, and also to get more insights into pitfalls and possibilities in relation to that. So hopefully we'll get back, perhaps in a forum like this in the next year.
That would be fantastic. Very last question from me. Like, let's say that now we have zoomed ahead 5 years in time, and we are looking back at the pandemic. How do you think we will then look at what happened 5 years from now? How will we look at what happened? What do you say, Ebba?
Well, I hope we will feel completely surreal, and that did that even happen? I hope. But no, but and hopefully also that we've learned a couple of things and taken some really positive things with this not so positive situation.
What do you say, Magnus, Thure?
I totally agree with Ebba again. Just one thing, I think we will, as always, when you look back, how did we even? Oh, like that is the thing I think it feels all the time when I look back on time. But hopefully one of the big things that we understand that we can change things profoundly. We really can do. It's not impossible. Before this, who would have thought that all of the flights half over Europe would close down and people would travel as little as they do now? Who would have thought that 5 months ago or 1 year ago? Impossible, everyone would say. And now we actually did it, and people just like, yeah, we can do very big changes, and we have to do big changes if we want to change our Earth. So I hope that this feeling and the knowledge that we really can change whatever we want, and that stays with us a little bit more.
Crisis as an accelerant for innovation, to say the least. Okay, thank you so much. This was brought to you by Lund University School of Economics and Management, and the aim with this event is to create conversation between academia and the surrounding society. And if you're interested in collaborating with us or on more upcoming events, you're very welcome to visit our website lusem.lu.se. I want to say this is also recorded, so if you want to share it with friends and colleagues afterwards, you can. They can view it with the same link as you're watching this webinar on YouTube right now. So I'm Kristin Heinonen, and I want to say thank you, as Joe Biden says, to our guests, Ebba Ljungerud, Magnus, Thure, Nilsson, and Calle Rosengren. Bye-bye, and stay safe.